Welcome back to the second of two previews that we'll have this week on Racing Rundown from Stakes Action at Saratoga. This is our preview of the Grade 1 Saratoga Derby run this Saturday on the same card as the Whitney, which we also have a preview for on Racing Rundown. There will be a link below to that in the description if you could check that out if you are interested. We're going to talk about all 11 horses in this race, as we usually do on Racing Rundown. And I will also mention, in addition to the two races stateside, we also have this week's segment of Racing Rundown Around the World, which will be featuring the Phoenix Stakes at the Curragh. So if you're interested in that, you can also check that out. But we're going to move on now to this race, and we're going to talk about all 11 horses for this race. And we'll start off with the number one horse. That's Main Event, winner of the Kent Stakes last out at Delaware Park. Main Event is a horse that, if there wasn't so much speed in this race, I would be a little bit intrigued by, because he's a little bit higher on the morning line than I would have expected him to be. Now, this is a very tough race, and I do not envy David Aragona having to make this morning line. But, I think this morning line is definitely liable to change come post time. Annapolis was installed as the morning line favorite, so definitely very fluid with how stuff will go in this race. But Main Event, and that's going to kind of be my theme with this race, is I'm staying away from horses that have speed in here. There's three main horses. Main Event's one of them. His win in the Kent was pretty good last time out. Very bad effort in the American Turf, but you can toss bad efforts from horses at Churchill. And then credible efforts in the Cutler Bay and the Palm Beach at Gulfstream in the spring and late winter earlier on this year. So credible horse. He has been he's been in the top three 4 of his 7 starts in his career. And you look at some of those early starts; those were in the early part of his 2-year-old campaign. So this is a good horse, but unfortunately, too much speed in here may also be a little bit outclassed in terms of some of the other top-level horses in this race. We're going to move on now to the number 2 horse in this race, a horse that I really have liked for a long time, and that's Grand Sonata. And Grand Sonata was a big part of my plays in the Belmont Derby back a month ago when we did the Belmont Derby here on Racing Rundown. Very tough to not get him up for third, and there certainly would have helped out a lot getting him up for third there. But Grand Sonata, I think the reasons that I liked him in the Belmont Derby certainly are going to translate to this race. Now, I am not crazy about him shortening up half a furlong, but I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. But the 2 things that I really like about Grand Sonata, or 3 things I should say, that I really like about Grand Sonata. Number 1 is his consistency. This horse in 8 career starts has been in the money 6 times. And then a 7th time last time, he was just a neck away from being third in there. So 7 of 8 career starts, this horse has hit the board. He's a consistency machine. And you know that you're going to get a good effort from Grand Sonata in this race. The other thing that I like is there should be horses in front of him. You're not going to see Classic Causeway walk like he did in the Belmont Derby. Hopefully not. I don't think that's going to happen. And I'm surely going to play this race as if that's not going to happen. And the other thing is, this horse continuously gets overlooked. He was 32-1, huge long shot last time in the Belmont Derby, just narrowly did not get up, so he didn't get paid for that. But he's 15-1 right now in the morning line. I think you're going to get another pretty decent price on this horse. And for a horse that has finished in the money 6 of 8 times, on the board 7 of 8, that's going to be a very good play for you in this race if you do choose to go about that. I'm not going to pick Grand Sonata to win in this race, but Grand Sonata, consistency machine, got to pick him in some facet to hit the board in this race, and I certainly will be doing that in this spot. We're going to move on now to the number 3 horse, Emmanuel, who changed the Belmont Derby by not running in it. And, there was the whole drama with a medication injection being given at the wrong time, which forced this horse to be scratched from the Belmont Derby. And because he was scratched from the Belmont Derby, changed the entire dynamics of that race and allowed Classic Causeway to be able to steal the race on the front end. Now, I think Emmanuel, certainly we hope he runs in this race this time. I think he will. I don't think that there's going to be any issues like what happened last time. But in this race, kind of similar to the way I thought the Belmont Derby was going to play out, I think he will go up there with Classic Causeway. Now you also add Main Event in this race. I didn't like him in the Belmont Derby because I thought him and Classic Causeway would soften each other up. I thought Emmanuel would run a good race, but I thought he would be packing it in toward the end. And your Nation's Prides, your Stone Ages, your Grand Sonatas would run by toward the end. And unfortunately, that didn't happen, obviously, because Emmanuel was not in the race. So him being in this race certainly bodes well for other horses in this race, but not necessarily for him. The thing that I need Emmanuel to do in this race is I need him to go out there. I need other horses to be up there with him, which I don't doubt that at least Classic Causeway will be in most likely main event as well. But I need those three to go up there, soften each other up, and set it up for the horses coming from behind, like will be with the next horse that we're going to talk about. And that is not Stone Age, Nation's Pride. The Charlie Appleby Godolphin entrant for this race. Nation's Pride was my pick in the Belmont Derby, and Nation's Pride is going to be my pick in the Saratoga Derby. I thought Nation's Pride ran a really good race in the Belmont Derby, all things considered. Classic Causeway tripped out in there, walked alone on the front end. Nation's Pride ran as good as he could have. I think if Emmanuel had been in there to soften up Classic Causeway just a bit, Nation's Pride would have been able to get up in the Belmont Derby. That's neither here nor there. I don't need to, play with hypotheticals in this spot. The form from Epsom has really not been good, but at the same time, the American 3-year-olds on the turf really aren't that good either. So while in most cases I would not be playing horses from Epsom, Nation's Pride already gave a good account of himself, and I think that this race is going to set up for him even better. And I thought the Belmont Derby set up really well for him, but I think this race is going to set up for him even better than the Belmont Derby did. I'm not crazy about them cutting back and half a furlong in this race, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be fine, and I don't have a problem picking Nation's Pride on top in here. One other note, William Buick is in to ride, so that's certainly also a good sign that William Buick crosses an ocean to ride a horse that is already grade 1 place, so it certainly gives you a little bit of a vote of confidence in this spot. And now we're going to move on to the Aidan O'Brien entrant in this race, and that is the 3rd place finisher from the Belmont Derby, Stone Age. And you can pretty much take everything that I said about Nation's Pride and put it to Stone Age in this spot. Now, the big concern that I had with taking Nation's Pride over Stone Age in the Belmont Derby was Stone Age ran a little bit better than Nation's Pride did at Epsom. But Nation's Pride ran better than Stone Age did in the Belmont Derby, but I think it was kind of 6-1, half dozen the other with those two horses. And you could certainly make the same case for Stone Age winning the race that I did for Nation's Pride winning the Belmont Derby had Emmanuel been in the race. I mentioned Emmanuel changed the whole dynamic of the race without even being in it. And so that's how critical the scratch of Emmanuel was in the spot. Again, don't like really anything coming out of Epsom, but at the same time, these two horses already proved themselves against certainly lesser tier American 3-year-old colts on the turf. And, there's a lot to like about Stone Age. You could potentially get, a bit of a better price on him than I may have initially thought that you were going to get on him. But again, I am notoriously awful at predicting how markets are going to go in the race. So just take anything that I say about this race in terms of how it's played with a grain of salt, because I really have no idea how they're going to go in this race. But I think Stone Age is going to run another really strong race here because he already passed the test last time. And I don't really see how this race doesn't set up really well for him like it did last time. Now we're going to move on to the number 6 horse in this race, and that's, Annapolis, the 3rd of 3 Todd Pletcher horses in this race. And Annapolis is a real intriguing type here because I wasn't expecting him to be in this spot. And, Annapolis has had a weird year up to this point. 2 really impressive victories to start off his career, and I thought he was going to be a very tough horse to beat come Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf time. Unfortunately, he was injured, did not make it to that race, and we didn't see him back until the Penn Mile at Penn National on June 3rd. And that was a very not good effort for him there, considering he was beat by a much inferior horse. He should have been able to handle that horse, even I think in spite of the layoff there. But you can always give him the benefit of the doubt because he didn't run for over 8 months in that spot. So, or I should say exactly 8 months from that Pilgrim into the Penn Mile. So can kind of throw that race out. His run in the Manila was a very strong effort. I like Double Clutch, the runner-up in there. I'm actually going to be picking Double Clutch in the National Museum of Racing Hall of Fame. So I liked the form coming out of that race. And Annapolis certainly has some upside in this spot. But I just don't know with him. I'm also, a little bit iffy taking him stretching out for the first time. And I know that Nation's Pride, Stone Age, and some of the other horses in the spot, they have proven themselves going the distance. And not that Annapolis can't do it, but in these kind of races, you kind of got to cherry pick reasons to not pick a certain horse. And that's kind of what I have to do with Annapolis here. I like Nation's Pride and Stone Age a little bit more than him, so I got to leave him off in this spot. But it's kind of risky because when he has been on, he has proven to be a quality horse, and a little bit iffy taking against him on some kind of technicality. But I got to do that in this race because you can't take everybody in here. Now we're going to move on to a horse that I had a lot of good things to say about going into the Belmont Derby, and that was Royal Patronage. And you now notice that I am saying his name without the Anglicanized form because this horse has now been moved from Charles Johnson to Graham Motion's barn. And so this horse will now be starting a full U.S. campaign. And I think that this horse can be very impactful like I thought he could be in the Belmont Derby. Now, he has shown some speed in the past. He was on the lead in the Dante, a race where he ultimately finished second behind Desert Crown and he wasn't that far off finishing fifth, very, very narrow pack toward the end. The group toward the end of that Belmont Derby was very compact, and he was a part of that. And he's also, as I said, been one that has the potential to show some speed, so he could also be up there, although I don't think Joel is going to be eager to get involved, make that top three a top four, but Royal Patronage will probably sit fourth off of those top three in there, and I think he could, potentially run another strong effort here. Maybe, if you're not crazy about using both Stone Age and Nation's Pride, maybe you could use him instead of one of those two. He's certainly proven himself to be, in some cases, quality, back when he was in Europe group stakes level. His effort and runner-up effort in the Dante I thought was pretty good. I thought he ran an under-the-radar okay race in the Guineas. Didn't run well in the Derby, but that was never going to go well because he was going to be forwardly placed there. So I think Royal Patronage is an intriguing type here, but ultimately for me, there were better that I can trust more, but I still do like Royal Patronage a little bit coming into this spot. Now we're going to move on to the next horse in this race, and that's the other Graham Motion horse in this race, and that's Dog, a horse who, again, the Belmont Derby was so evenly matched, it was difficult to not like most of the horses in there, and there wasn't really anything wrong with Dog going into the Belmont Derby. Graded stakes win, he won the Appalachian at Keeneland. Weird effort in the American turf, but you can kind of toss that. Like I've said, you can toss everything from Churchill Downs that was bad. And then before the Transylvania, Central Park winner at Aqueduct, so he was unbeaten going into that American turf. Disappointing-ish effort in the Belmont Derby. He was still not far off of that group towards the end. He was bunched up with that group toward the end. So really 1 through 6 was right on top of each other toward the end of that race. So it's difficult to say it was disappointing there, but it's also difficult to see how Dog is going to be better than Nation's Pride, Stone Age, the horses that finished in front of him. So that's the reason why I don't like him in here. He's a good horse, but the horses I like in this race were in front of him in the Belmont Derby, and I don't see a reason why that's not going to be the case this time. So unfortunately, I got to take away from Dog in this race, although he has been a horse that I have been inclined to give respect to throughout the course of his career. Now we're going to move on to the number 9 horse, the surprise Belmont Derby winner, and that is Classic Causeway. Classic Causeway is a horse that I actually, will say this just to kind of prop him up a little bit. I did actually bet a saver $1 bet on him because after Emmanuel came out of the race, I thought that, Lone Speed could potentially carry in this spot. Unfortunately, he did do that. That $1 bet on him did pay pretty well toward all things considered in the race. But I think this race is not going to set up for him the way the Belmont Derby did. There's 2 other speed horses in here, potentially a 4th if you include Royal Patronage. And so I got to take against Classic Causeway here. It was cool to see him win the Belmont Derby. I would not be opposed. I think it would be cool to see him win another Grade 1 and, make a case for himself in terms of 3-year-old championship, not Eclipse Award. I don't know if he would really be in contention for that, but it would be cool to see. But just in terms of the way the tactics are going to play out in this race, I don't think Classic Causeway is going to be able to win this race because I think he really needed to trip out in the Belmont Derby. He really did trip out in that Belmont Derby. I don't think he's going to trip out to that level, so I got to take against him in this spot. And now we're going to move on to the number 10 horse in this race, and that's Stone Age. I've been referencing Stone Age a lot, and it's because Stone Age was one of the real linchpin horses in that Belmont Derby last month, and there's not really any reason to dislike Stone Age coming into this spot. Really good third place finish there. High class effort over in Europe. He didn't run terrible in the Derby at Epsom. And then before that had a couple of good wins going into the Derby, including a victory in a Derby trial in Ireland. And then obviously broke his maiden nicely in his first 2 starts of the year. Okay effort at Epsom. Again, the Epsom form has been very bad, but he's already proven himself to be able to run a grade 1 placing here. He is going to be included in my picks for this race. I'll leave it at that and get to that when we come to the picks section of this. And we'll move on to the final horse that we're going to talk about on this Saratoga Derby preview. And that's Ethereal Road, a horse who I have a very love-hate relationship with. And some of you folks out there may know what I'm talking about with Ethereal Road and his fun stuff with the Kentucky Derby. But, Ethereal Road, it's interesting to see him in this spot. He's coming out of a 6th place finish in the Ohio Derby. It's not a good effort for him there. The start before that, strong win in the Sir Barton on dirt. And, that's the thing that is the major thing with Ethereal Road. Most of his starts have been on dirt, but I don't necessarily think this is the worst spot for him. He's by quality road out of a war front mare. So you can see how he could potentially be able to get the turf in this spot. But Ethereal Road has just never been good. And I hate to be so blunt, but that's the reason why I got to be against him in this spot, because he's just never been good. His maiden win and then the Sir Barton win were both against, pretty weak horses. The Rebel was the worst Kentucky Derby prep last year, in my opinion, and then not really any strong impressions given anywhere else. So I got to be against Ethereal Road just because Ethereal Road has never proven to be good in his career. We're going to move on now to my picks for this race. Obviously, as I mentioned, I'm taking Nation's Pride on top again. I'm going to run it back with him. I don't really see a reason not to. He had a really good effort in the Belmont Derby, and I thought that he was a loser pretty much by circumstance in there. So I'm going to take him on top. Got to take Stone Age second, and I don't want to take the horses that I think are going to be the top 2 choices, 1, 2 in here, but I really don't see how they're not going to run 1, 2 in this race because they ran 2, 3 last time, and they were both losers by circumstance in that race. So got to take them top 2 here. But the big play for this is, once again, I'm going to stick Grand Sonata in for third there. I think he's going to float up again. I think you're going to get a pretty good price on him. And, I did this last year. There was a value horse that I liked in the Saratoga Derby, Soldier Rising, 12-1. He hit the board second. Now, granted, we had a big long shot winner in State of Rest in the Saratoga Derby last year. But Soldier Rising got up for second there. I think that could be what you're going to get with Grand Sonata in this race. And I think that there's a pretty good shot that happens as I laid out, because he is a very consistent horse in his career. So I'm going to play him with the 2, 3 finishers from the Belmont Derby. So I'm going to take that 2, 3, 4. I'm going to bump them up a spot and have that be my trifecta in this race. It's very difficult to separate Nation's Pride and Stone Age. You could very easily reverse that, maybe throw someone else in there, but I got to take that top 2, or I got to take them in this spot. I said top 2 because I think they're going to be the top 2 choices. So I got to take them with Grand Sonata. And with that being said, that's going to be it for this preview of the Saratoga Derby here on Racing Rundown. Hopefully we were able to help you out. There are timestamps down below in the description, as you probably saw, so you can go back and get my thoughts on all the horses in there. And also be sure to check out our preview of the Grade 1 Whitney, and then also the Phoenix Stakes at the Curragh on Racing Rundown Around the World. We'll see you next time.